Welcome to the Superhero Sidekick Leadership Coaching Podcast with Joel Smith and Joe Baker. We're here to help you develop your superpowers. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I am Joel Smith, and I am with my co-host, Joe Baker. Joe, what's going on?
Hey, excited to have this guest on today, a good friend of mine, Matt Hammitt from Sanctus Real. And we've been friends for a few years now. It was a great fundraiser for Storks and partner when we were building that. And now we're working on a pretty cool app together that we'll share a little bit about. But yeah, what's going on with me? Mostly training every single day, getting Sam ready to climb a big wall in 2 weeks.
Wow, that's coming up quickly. Is your ankle all healed up and ready to go?
You know, I was on crutches this morning on my walk today because I've been trying to do typically 12,000 steps a day, but this last week I've been trying to do like 17,000 steps, and I'm really kind of pushing it, and I'm having to ice it and all that, but I'm working it really hard trying to get it ready.
The snowmobiling we did together might not have helped, Joe.
Oh yeah, that was so good, dude. I'm so glad I went out there with you.
So was that after the fact?
I've never snowmobiled before with a guy in a cast in West Yellowstone, and he was doing things I couldn't do. So his therapist, his physical therapist, wasn't real happy with him.
Yeah. He doesn't think I'm the smartest bulb on the tree. That's the brightest bulb.
But
on
you
the
are
tree,
the most adventurous bulb on the tree. So
yeah, it was pretty wild. Like Joel, I couldn't walk. I couldn't even put like 5 pounds on my foot, and yet we could ride these machines at 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, through the mountains. It was pretty cool.
Nice. So Matt, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and I'm sure some of them probably know who you are, but others maybe not. So tell us who you are and kind of what you do.
Yep. So my name is Matt Hammitt, and I used to sing for a band called Sanctus Real for 20 years. And so we did 7 albums with Sparrow Records, which is part of Capitol. At one point it was under Universal, and then we moved under Capitol. And so Sparrow is a great label to be under, and I guess 8 albums total if you include the solo album I did with them. So my history is really songwriting, performing with a band, but then about 5 years ago, I went off on my own, and just because I wanted to be home more. So the touring life was a bit of a grind for me. I loved the creative process, but being on the road, 4 to 6 days a week was incredibly hard, not just on me, but I had a wife and 4 kids, so that I liked. So I wanted to see. So last few years I've been doing probably, crazy enough, actually more speaking than singing, even when it comes to live events. But I've also written a book last year called Lead Me, and then do a lot of songwriting with other artists, from independent artists to artists who are signed with major labels.
Excellent. Any songs you can share with us that maybe you've written and didn't perform? Or is that top secret information?
No, not at all, man. I mean, nothing huge that probably, actually, the first song I ever, if people listen to Christian radio, they would know some of the songs, but one of my favorite songs was one of the first of my co-writing that got cut, which is a song called Words by a band called Hawk Nelson that still gets recurrent play a lot on the Christian radio format. So that still remains one of my favorite. Actually got the plaque right there. It still hangs in my office.
Awesome. I think about like that's reading your book, and just, you came out with this Dove Award-winning song, Lead Me. And basically, it's the whole world's heard it. You'd have to be hibernating for the last 10 years to not hear it. But you shared with me that then your wife came to you and was like, hey, now you got to show me. And I feel like that's a pretty, remarkable part of your story in making that big transition in your life.
Yeah, well, maybe that's also a good lesson for creative people, is that our life is in our head. We have a very large imagined life. And so I would honestly say that as I was being creative, even in writing a song about my wife's needs, which she had expressed to me about me being more present, my internal life of good intentions and ideas and vision was probably more real to me than who I actually was in real life.
Yeah,
And that's a
wow.
really big message too that I share when I speak about the ability. Henry Cloud talks about integrity and character having a lot to do with being able to deal with the demands of reality, not what's in our head or our imagined life or vision. So I think, that's a huge part of my creative journey, is learning to stay grounded outside of my vision and outside of my creativity and my process, in a real world process that makes other people feel loved along the way, who may not understand everything that's happening in my head. So when I wrote the song Leave Me for my wife, and she was like, cool, you did this awesome creative process and talked about the man you want to be. Well, I need more than a song, So, which very fair. So that song continues to serve as a reminder. It was, for your listeners who aren't familiar with the band, it was, internationally #1 song on all Christian radio formats, and for about 3 months, about 9 weeks. Well, a little over 2 months. In 2010 and 2011, and so it was a big song, and a lot of people were singing it, and we were playing in front of a lot of big crowds who were singing it back to me, and it really held me accountable to whether or not I was going to live by those words or not. So it's become a big part of my life and my message.
Well, Matt, I love your message there, just the whole being grounded part. And, I'm a leadership coach. And so one of the things that I think about with that, because that's a great message, I think about there being a couple of different type of people that really can struggle sometimes. And that would be the dreamers that are always dreaming and they don't land the plane, they don't make it a reality. But then there's also the people on the ground that maybe everything is reality, but they can't dream. They can't dream. They can't think outside the box. They can't think about becoming more, becoming better, growing. And so I think, to your point, what you're saying is, hey, it's important to be creative. It's important to be a dreamer. It's important to really think outside the box, but we've got to do both.
Really, and it can create a great deal of frustration for people that work in our organizations or even contract with us, right? Because they can't keep up with this imagined life that we have, because they're trying to operate, and then we need them. They're tactical, and I am kind of joking, tell I am somewhat tactical as well, but but
That's
man,
true.
But I can also be the big dreamer where I'm throwing out all the stuff that people are like, okay, I need a few minutes or a few weeks to absorb it all and figure out what you actually need from me.
When did you first realize that you were a creative person? How young were you, and what was some of your first memories of really being creative?
Yeah, it's funny. My mom actually has pictures of me dressing up, and it was one in particular. I'm like in a sombrero and a fake mustache, and I'm like 8 years old, with like my dad's robe on, and I'm like up on the stairs singing for them. I was kind of more of like creative at home, not so much like, I would never do that at school, right? Or like in front of other people, but I kind of was at home where I was comfortable, very creative. And then also when I was 14, my brother picked up a guitar, and I just remember him teaching me a few chords, and I was much more interested in creating songs than I was actually learning how to like play technically, so
Sure.
It was a vehicle for me to create something more than it was like for me to just learn how to use it in a technical way. So I knew from an early age that that was kind of my path.
So as you mentioned, do you see that same trend where they live in that kind of envisioned world that everyone's trying to keep up with? And what are some of your experiences in just coaching people through that?
All right, say that one more time, Joe. Your internet kind of cut out for 1 second in the middle of that question.
Yeah. So when you're coaching other creatives, what have you experienced with them in their imagined world that they're living in, and how that's impacting the people around them?
Yeah, well, I think like especially, well, maybe it's not just music, but I do obviously a lot of coaching with songwriters and creatives in music. Is that yeah, I think that there's that element of success that kind of gets minced in with the creativity. So like they're looking at a certain package. So they want to be really creative. They are really creative, but then they're also like connecting their own creativity to the package that somebody else has made. So they say, oh, I want to be successful like so-and-so has been successful. And what I see honestly is that even that disconnect from the reality of who somebody else is versus who they are can often stifle their creative process that could be leading them in a much more satisfying or fulfilling direction in their purpose, because they're kind of got this string attached to this other idea of what success looks like. So that's one element, I think, of reality that I try to really help people with. It's understanding like especially financially, like that's really dangerous when you're like, oh, well, so-and-so's making millions of dollars. Okay, like that's great. And I know you want to get there. And I know money is important for us to live. But however, it's like your creative process tied to that person's success is not going to get you in a place where you're able to to do what they're doing, because that's, it's like you have your own path. So focus on the creativity first. Don't tie yourself to other paths, and find where your creativity is taking you. And then the rest comes. So I think that's probably the biggest area I try to help ground people.
As visionaries, it's so hard to get people like on board with what you're doing. Sometimes it's so hard to like just allow them to see it. And sometimes you work with people who just can't see it too. And it's like, in some ways you have to really be gentle with them. Like they literally like, it's like my wife is an extremely visionary, and I can't tell her my like big lofty ideas past like 9 o'clock. Like she's gonna think we're gonna go bankrupt, and and I'm just verbal processing. Like I wasn't even gonna do those ideas. I'm just thinking them through. But sometimes our vision is so big and so powerful that it really kind of overwhelms the people around us. And I think as a visionary, we can one, overlook other people. One, we can two, like you said, like we imagine a world that isn't, because we're thinking 5 years out like it's today, and all of those things kind of clobber our team, the people around us.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be debilitating if you get too far ahead, and it's that's a good word, man. I resonate with like the verbal processing that somebody takes fully seriously, like you're going to do this tomorrow. Cause like I'm the same way, where like I've got to learn who I can verbally process with, and they understand I'm just processing. Especially like my wife, like you said, like she thinks it's the same thing. Like, well, how can we, we're already doing so much. I'm like, no, I'm just thinking about it. It's like, she takes it very literally. And so I do have to learn to draw those lines.
Yeah. When you say something like, well, what if we, and then what doesn't matter what if you, what you put behind that, it's like, so you're planning that? No, I said, what if? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And a lot of times we need those people around us who can really like handle that vision and can kind of like help us put it into a plan and really be able to articulate it. Which is interesting. Like I'm kind of visionary strategic. You're a lot of ways like visionary, like tactical, and that's such an interesting difference that we carry. Like when you like when we're working on the app, you're very quickly say, okay, well, how does it actually work? What are the mechanisms of it? I'm dreaming out the concepts of what we could possibly do, but those things coming together work really well. So
yeah, I guess, I can see the big vision. I can catch it. I can grab it. But then as we go back down to step one, it's like, as we build our way back up there, it's like, I've got to see how each level is going to get us there. You can just be like, you can just fully embrace the you can just fully embrace all of it up there, man. Like,
I'm like, we'll figure it out, Matt, because we got you. We got you. That's what you're for. And so awesome. In a nutshell, let's try to tell our audience just a little bit about our app without giving them anything that's like too sacred of the secret sauce of it. But what why don't you want to share a little bit? No.
Yeah, well, I think in our culture, we're fast paced, we're busy, we're a lot of couples are, two income households, and so I think one of the common things I'm hearing all the time is doing a lot of speaking on I do a lot of speaking on family and relationship and marriage, and so always hearing that it's very difficult for people to connect in a meaningful way on a regular basis. And so we're trying to create something that can be a communication tool for couples to really be able to connect in a meaningful way, really simple, meaningful ways that can lead to deeper conversation naturally, and a way to measure relational growth over time through a series of tools, from how's your heart, to what am I thinking, to how have I communicated with my spouse, how have I been intimate with my spouse, how have I had adventure with my spouse and my family, and all those things integrated into really getting some real, some real history for them, so they can look back and go, oh my gosh, look at our journey together. And when people are feeling discouraged or feeling they need to grow, they can actually not only use the tools to grow in real time, but also look back at how they've been growing over the course of time. So funny enough, it actually does ground you a bit in reality, right? Because in relationship, we have the same problem. We have ideals and vision, and we often are affected by our emotion in any given moment as to how our relationship is, and how strong it is. I mean, we could have a really great season, and one argument or one bad day can make us just think, oh man, it's all over, this is horrible. And I hope that people can actually use it as a tool to ground where they need to grow and see how they've grown, and then also help them with their daily communication and adventure. So Joe brings the adventure piece.
I'm always pulling for adventure.
Challenging me.
Well, it's kind of like, we've kind of lived in like this in every Christian marriage circle. It's always about like, you're always talking about like the date night. And it's like, but the date night's always like, go out, spend money, and like eat at a restaurant, and it's like, that really what I think would be amazing for your relationship is like, go on a hike in the rain, like go do something that like gets your blood going, do a tandem skydive together, or even just, go to the, go to the trampoline park.
Joe's simple version, do a tandem skydive together, just normal adventure stuff.
Well, that Forbes magazine came out with this, all this research that said, what is the number one thing that holds families together? Do you guys know what it is? Did I tell you it?
You told me.
Tandem skydiving.
No, it's actually
right.
It's camping together. Number one thing that was in common of families that stay together is camping together, and it's because it's out of your element. You get into you get out of your comfort zone, and you have to work together, and kind of drives you together. And so that's one piece we want marriages to do. We're going to challenge marriages to have one adventure a month, and that's really important. Yes, and then we really want them, having one deep conversation a week at least, and so we got a couple different concepts of how to use technology to lead a marriage to be really deep and really great, and really just, discover some things about each other along the way. Because even if I'm married now for 10 years, and, it's like Ann and I don't often have discussions about, our family and our past and all these things that actually like allowed us to fall in love when we originally got married. But we don't really naturally talk about those things now, but the technology kind of draws you back into that falling in love process. And it's going to draw you back into that getting to know each other process that sometimes you lose when you're really busy. And so I'm pretty excited for it. So that should come out sometime in the new year, hopefully January 1st.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Nice. We'll be looking forward to it.
And so why don't you give us your final thoughts on this concept of creativity, and what you'd want to say to other business people out there that kind of have this creative bug. What you're saying, I'll close out this podcast with that.
Yeah, being a creative person is difficult. We talked a little bit before about kind of this realm of we've talked a lot, I'm sure, not just on this episode, but in general, this realm of vision, realm of dreaming, trying to figure out how to allow yourself to be a little disconnected from the ground and also stay grounded in reality. I mean, that's a really hard line, but I think, you know, creative people are so special because they can connect with a piece of themselves that some people can't seem to connect with, or a piece of like, I don't understand dimension or all like this. I mean, gosh, I've been on my spiritual journey for, my whole life, but I'm like, I don't understand all the dimensions of like soul and body and earth and heaven and all that. That's such a mystery to me still in so many ways. But there is a piece of a creative person that can connect with, in some sense, however you define it, this other dimension of vision, right? And divinely inspired, just we're created that way. And so I think, what I often try to do is help visionaries who get discouraged, or creative people who get discouraged, reconnect with that place inside themselves. Because that's what I see the most. I see that as our creativity or our ideas get rejected, because a huge part of creative life, honestly, is learning how to deal with rejection. I mean, man, when I was doing songwriting, and especially like country music songwriters, those guys will write 2 songs a day, 5 days a week, and they hope to get one big cut that pays their bills for the year. You want to talk about like the rate of rejection that people face in these creative fields. I do feel like it's the same with people who are hyper creative in any industry. All day long, your job is to throw out idea, throw out vision, throw out things that people can't grasp right away. And a lot of that life is rejection, to where it can wear people down to the point where they just either lose touch with the creativity, or just the burden of the rejection, or the burden of not being understood can become so great that it can weigh them down and bring even their heart into a place of just despair in their work, sometimes even in their life. And so what I would say is find that time to disconnect from other people, disconnect from technology. Like last week, I went to Wyoming for a week with a bunch of guys, and I didn't know how bad I needed it. We showed up. They said, okay, there's no cell service, but you'll have Wi-Fi. And we showed up and they said, oh, by the way, there's no Wi-Fi either. So I was like, everybody had like a split moment of panic.
That's awesome.
Where they were like, do you have a landline where I can call my wife and tell her there's no Wi-Fi?
That's funny.
And they did have a landline.
Wow.
But, it was amazing. So 5 days with just a landline if I had to make a call.
And then you had to try to figure out what your wife's phone number is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank God I remembered it. So it's been the same for 20 years, thankfully.
Wow.
And so that time to be away from the voices, from other voices, from email, from work, like I walked away from that so refreshed to be creative again, and so connected to what I felt God was speaking to my soul, and the things inside of me that were like kind of being birthed, new things, and projects that I've been working on with people like you, that just giving me new thought, new creativity, new vision. And so I would say, man, don't neglect that time to really breathe and disconnect and refresh, because the world can be a brutal place, especially when you're creative doing business. It can be really discouraging. And so take that time for yourself to get away, disconnect, and just breathe and let yourself reconnect with the heart and soul of who God designed you to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice for everybody, whether you're creative or not. We get overwhelmed by the world. We get overwhelmed by expectations and disappointments and things that don't go as planned, and raising kids and doing all of this stuff and busy calendars, and is so easy just to get disconnected and distracted from the one relationship that's most important. So yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I'll just close this out. Thank you again, Matt, for coming on the show. And this has been the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. You can follow us at superherosidekick.com or anywhere they have podcasts. Also, make sure to subscribe to us on Facebook, and we'll stay in touch with you that way. So,
Matt, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to check out your music or check out what you're doing in the world?
Yep. So all my music is just under Matt Hammitt. It's on every streaming outlet, wherever you listen to music. My book Lead Me is out with Waterbrook Multnomah, which is part of Penguin Random House. So also available in paperback, ebook, audio, wherever you buy your books. And Matt Hammitt, matthammitt.com. And then just my @ Matt Hammitt, wherever you're on socials. So I try to keep it easy for everybody.
Awesome.
Well, hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks for your time, and we appreciate your story. And go check him out if you're out there. Check out Sanctus Real. Sanctus Real has some seriously terrific music from way back. So, no offense, but I'm a little bit partial to your older stuff. So
it's all right, man. No worries. I love it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.